Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Be a Better You podcast. Today, I have a guest that I'm going to have introduce herself, but this is going to be a really interesting topic that I'm so curious about, and I can't wait to hear more about. I do know a little bit, but I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience, let them know who you are and what you do, and then we'll just dive right in.
Sounds great. Thanks, Allison. My name is Carole Murphy. I am 59 years old and I am the founder of She Asked Why. I grew up with a narcissistic mother, and something that's very unique about my story is that I gaslit myself about her true nature for 53 years. And the reason I gaslit myself is because who wants to believe that the person who is supposed to love them the most unconditionally, whether it's a mother or a spouse or a partner, is abusing them? And that was me. I did not want to at all believe that my mother was abusing me. So I normalized it.
Mhm.
In fact, I think a lot of us do normalize things like that. So in 2020, back when the pandemic was in full swing, my husband and I packed everything we owned and put it in a storage unit in Ohio. And we drove to my elderly parents' home in Florida to be live-in caregivers. It was the pandemic. My dad had health issues. I'm very compassionate by nature and thought, you know what? I'm going to go take care of my parents. It was a great way for me to, I don't know, maybe be that good daughter.
Mhm.
Um, but we arrived on their doorstep, and at this point, I did not know that I was a victim of a narcissistic mother. I was just there to care for my parents, and boy, did we walk into a war zone. It was not at all what we
Mm.
expected. So, um, we ended up, I tried to make it work for 6 weeks. I'm sorry, 6 months. And at about that 6 to 8 week mark, that's when I started seeing things and allowing myself to have that awareness of something is like really, really wrong here.
Mm.
So that would have been December 2020. And by February, we had to flee for my safety and
Wow.
my emotional well being. So one could say I definitely failed that caregiving experience. And on the flip side of that coin, it was actually the experience that enabled me to truly see who my mother was.
Mm.
And so that would have been February 2021. We didn't have a home to come to in Ohio. We fled. And my mother died 6 months after. So that would be August 2021. When we fled back in February 21, that's when I went no contact. And I can tell you this, I don't think people talk enough about how hard no contact can be.
Mhm.
There's so much grief that comes with it. It doesn't matter if it's your mother or a partner or a spouse. The grief that comes with that is just overwhelming and unbearable, the guilty feeling. So, I was dealing with a lot of that for 6 months, and then she died, which um, I'm going to be blunt and say I'm grateful, because
Mhm.
that really did throw me into a just a deep inner reflection and, trying to heal, working with a therapist and stuff like that. So, fast forward a little bit. Wonderful thing about therapy is that it gave me validation. I had an amazing therapist and she validated me. She actually said, "You experienced chronic, egregious abuse at the hands of your mother." And I needed that. When you gaslight yourself about, like, is this really happening to me?
Mhm.
To have someone who's neutral listen to you and validate that was everything for me. But this is where my story gets a little different. This is where I stepped off that traditional beaten path. I, like I said, my therapist was wonderful. She validated me. She gave me language for what I experienced, but she couldn't answer the deepest questions that I needed answers to. I needed answers to why. And yes, therapy, the psychology world, they do answer why and they do a great job, but I needed to go deeper.
Mhm.
I needed to understand why my mother was the way she was, like what happened. And she was dead. There's no way she could answer it. Even if she was alive, she wouldn't answer it. So
Yeah.
that's right. Like there's just no way she would have answered it. But so I decided that I needed to speak with her spirit.
Mm.
So I invested $10,000 to work with a professional psychic medium for 6 months. We channeled my mother's spirit 4 times, and we channeled, let's see, 5 other spirit voices. So I could get a full, well-rounded view of narcissistic abuse. So it wasn't just my
Wow.
parents. Yeah, it wasn't just my parents that we channeled. We channeled the divine feminine. We channeled Yeshua ben Joseph, who is the Yeshua is the original Aramaic name for Jesus.
Hmm.
We also channeled. We did a joint channeling session with my mother's spirit and Yeshua.
Wow.
I needed to I needed to hear them together. I needed to see if he would um I don't know how to say else to say it, like stand next to my mother, right? Because she
Mm-hmm.
was vicious, she was sadistic, she was just a terrible human on earth.
Mm.
And then so that's with Yeshua and the divine feminine. That's where the channeling sessions took things deeper to like that
Mhm.
divine level. And then the final 2 sessions were with my spirit guides and my soul, which enabled me to take what I had heard in the prior sessions, take that to like a level of embodiment.
Mhm.
So it's like this full circle type of experience. And I'm telling you, the stuff that came through ex- it was exactly what I needed to know. It was stuff that just could not have come
Yeah.
from the human side of the relationship alone, right?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yes. Yeah. And so then what I did, I'll wrap this introduction up here. Then what I did was after the first channeling session with my mother's spirit, I realized how transformational it was for me to hear my mother's spirit say things that her human self could never say on earth.
Mhm.
And I realized that other people need to hear this information. And that's when I decided I was going to put it into, I call it a book. It's more like a digital product. It's not a
Mhm.
book on Amazon. It's not published or anything. It is just a well edited, um, word for word transcription of every channeling session I had, because my goal is to help other people,
Mm.
right? When you can understand why at the soul level these things happened. And there are a lot of universal things that came through in the channeling sessions that aren't just unique or like custom to me.
Mhm.
You know, there's general information in there, and I decided this needs to be shared with other
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing all of that. I have a lot of questions, as you could
Okay,
possibly
good.
imagine.
Hmm.
And we will link that in the show notes too, and your information for people to get a hold of it.
Great.
But I want to go back, right? Because um, you you were like me. Like I didn't know I was being abused. I didn't know it was emotional abuse by my ex, all of that. And you didn't know it from your mom until you went back and you were living with them. Was there
Yeah.
like an inciting incident or was there something that happened that you wouldn't mind to share?
Sure, of course. Oh, yeah, there were several signs, several red flags, which, I was obviously used to ignoring red flags, but it just got to the point where my mother was abusing my terminally ill father.
Mhm.
Like she would stay up until not, 3 a.m. in the morning when I was asleep to abuse him. I just could not ignore that anymore. She was baiting my small dog into fights with her dog. And then there was one incident that occurred. I actually recorded it on my phone because I thought I might need it for.
Mhm.
Actually, I ended up transcribing it. It was just it was an incident where she was being very aggressive toward me, and toward the end of this incident, I followed her back into her bedroom, and she had um, hoisted herself up on her bed and started screaming at me in a voice I didn't recognize. It was a very guttural voice. I probably shouldn't go into too much
That's
detail just
okay.
because I don't want to um, like
Sure. You don't have to.
offend your readers
Sure.
or
Yeah, yeah,
anything. But
yeah.
it was just that let's just say that night I had when I went to bed, I had to barricade the bedroom door with the dresser
Mm.
because I was scared of
Right.
whatever it was I saw.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized there's just no,
Hmm.
there's something deeply wrong here.
Yeah.
And so I actually went through and transcribed that video as well, and it is in my it's in
In
the
their book.
transcription as well. Yeah,
Wow.
because it's
Okay.
a pivotal point.
Yeah.
Sometimes something massive has to happen in order to get you to wake up,
Yeah. And that's where
right?
you were like, we're done here. I'm going no contact. We're out. And you left,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So that actually, no, I left 4 months after that,
Mm.
right? I left 4 months after that. Um, so that incident happened in October 2020. 2 months later is when I actually had a dark night of the soul. And
Mm.
that's when the realization, that's when I allowed myself to really accept that something's wrong here. My
Right.
mother is a narcissist. I am her target. And man, the amount of it was a tsunami of emotions that I
Mhm.
could not outrun, and I couldn't push anything down anymore.
Yeah.
When you have this dark night of the soul, this awakening, you cannot ignore it anymore.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
yeah,
That is, I'm so sorry that she was mistreating your dad, mistreating you, mistreating your dog, and who knows who else she was mistreating, but and abusing, right? That is,
right.
what a lot of people who are listening may relate to. So thank you for sharing that. So after that happened, I want to go to how did you come upon this channeling thing? Like, how did you seek out this channeler? I know you were saying earlier, like, you just like, I needed to know more, and you couldn't get it from her because she was already gone at that point, and you knew even if she was here, she wouldn't have revealed it. But like, what were the course of events that led you to this specific person that was channeling?
So I had actually had a couple of experience with different psychic mediums in the past, so I was already comfortable with the idea.
Hmm.
And these prior two experiences were very accurate, things that came through in those sessions, nobody else would have known. So I was already aware of how sessions like this work. And um, when therapy could not get to the point where it was satisfying this very deep need for these
Hmm.
soul level answers,
Hmm.
that's when I decided I'm going to work with a psychic medium. I have got to talk to her spirit.
Yeah.
And so it was really an easy decision for me to make just because, I am the type of person who uh, looks off of traditional path for things. So it was just a natural thing for me to do.
Wow. Okay. So when you got to this channeler, and for people who don't know what channeling is, they're basically getting information energetically through the ethers, like for wherever you're trying to access information. So, and people have gifts. I believe everybody can do this, but most people
Yes,
are just have too many blocks. But some people are really, really in tune with it, and they can channel all types of things and connect in all types of ways with different people who've passed and things like that. Would you agree with
I
that?
agree. Yes,
Okay.
100%.
Yeah. Okay. So when you were in these sessions with her, because you said you were there for like 6 months doing these sessions with her, I assume it's a her, right? A female?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, female.
Um, what was the thing that you were like, oh my gosh, like this is real versus like, oh, this is generic or general? Like, was there anything that came through that you were like, oh my gosh, like you said, no one would know.
Right, right. Yes. So the first thing that came through was um, so my psychic medium, as soon as my mother started coming through, she said, okay, mom is here with us. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but she said,
Hmm.
mom is here with us. And she is presenting so soft and flowy, which I thought, wait a second, soft and flowy is not my mother. But then she said, and she's presenting the color pink. And what what my psychic medium did not know was that after my mother died, I saw a pink orb
Mm.
in my bedroom.
Mm,
So, and I had not told her that. In fact, I hadn't told anybody that because it just, hey, I just saw a pink orb in the bedroom. It
mhm.
just, you know, I know I do. Um, well, let me take it somewhere else.
That's fine.
So it's okay. So hearing, hearing the color pink was associated with her, that was just I was just
Mhm,
immediately, yeah, this is my mother.
mhm,
And there were, several other things that my mother's spirit said. Some of them are personal, and so, I kind of leave those off the table. But hearing the color pink, there were, you know, I should check to see. I made a list of these things so I wouldn't forget.
mhm.
And
It's okay.
but there was a lot of them. Let's see, when we channeled my father's spirit, my profession, psychic medium, was able to give me details about my dad's personality on Earth
Mm,
that no one else would have known.
mhm.
So there were so many things that came through
Yeah.
from the other side that, Demi, my psychic medium's name was Demi, so I'll just refer to her as Demi. She said that my mother sends me signs, and one of those signs is a hummingbird with red on it. And Demi said that the red is significant. But I said, well, yeah, because my mother had red hair. So just these little nuances that
Yeah.
came through that let me know that we are absolutely connected
Oh,
to my
sure.
mother's spirit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, and I truly believe that we're all connected. We're connected to everything, each other, the earth, the trees, the rocks, the
yes,
planet, like everything's connected. So it's just a matter of getting on the same frequency in
right.
order to, now that's my personal belief, but people may have
Yeah.
different thoughts on that. So there were things, definite things that you were like, okay, this is real. This isn't just fluffy stuff. So was there something that you can share about like a perspective shift or an emotional shift that you had during one of the conversations of the channeling? I don't know if there was anything specific that you can remember about your mom coming through and saying things that you maybe were like relieved by or it helped you. Quick pause here. If you are listening to this and you're nodding along, like, yep, this is me, and you're ready to actually shift this and not just keep managing and coping, you can apply for a free root cause call using the link in the show notes. On that call, we're going to look at where you're at right now, where you want to be emotionally, and start uncovering what is actually in the way. And then I'm going to give you my recommendations and point you in the right direction if any of my programs might feel like a fit. And if it's aligned, we'll move forward. If not, you still leave with some clarity. All right, now let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, that's a really great question. One of the very first things my mother's spirit said was, and this shocked me because when I first sat down for the very first channeling session, I was terrified
Mm-hmm.
because who chooses to interact with their abusive mother's spirit? Like, I was terrified. I didn't know which mom was going to come
Mm-hmm.
through.
Yeah.
Um, and the very first thing she said, without being prompted, her spirit said, I never meant to hurt you. I never meant to bring forward all that came forward. And I
Mm-hmm.
was blown away. I could not understand why she would say that. But Demi had to remind me that the my mother's spirit was presenting as a higher version of her earthly self,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, on the other side, she was anchored more in love, right? More connected to source.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was speaking from that aspect. But here's the key. The key is she never meant to hurt me. She never meant to bring forward all that came forward, told me that we had a pre-birth plan, a pre-birth blueprint at the soul level.
Mm-hmm.
We agreed to this type of relationship prior to my mother incarnating in the 1940s. And then I came in the late 1960s. So it told me that we had agreed to this type of relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But it also told me she didn't mean to bring forward all that came forward. So it
Mm-hmm.
told me that she ab- abused, behaved worse than she might,
The
her
original
soul might,
contract. Yeah.
Yes, the
Yeah.
original contract had
Yeah.
stated. So that was a massive shift. First, to hear your abuser say, I didn't mean to hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes, I can remember my mother when she was on earth, you know, just gaslighting and saying, well, that didn't happen. And then,
Mm-hmm.
my mind would go to, oh, okay, so maybe she didn't mean it. And then to hear her spirit say she didn't mean it, it was just,
Yeah.
I'm going to admit it was confusing at first. But as this channeling session progressed and we started to get into talking about the pre-birth plan at the soul level, and we actually talked about this throughout multiple channeling sessions, not just with my mom, but also with,
Mm-hmm.
the other spirits that I mentioned when we opened up our talk together here. So that was a very that set the stage really for me to open my mind even more than it already was,
Mm-hmm.
and to relax a little bit, because it also helped me to realize I'm not getting the monster I had on earth. I am getting someone who the first word she said was, I never meant to hurt you and never meant to bring forward all that came forward. So that was the very first. It just, I'm not going to say it put me at ease. It just made
Yeah.
me not feel so cautious,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, especially like thinking about the history and trauma that you had with your mom, like you're expecting that same version, right? But what you're
Mhm.
saying is it was almost as if when she passed, a higher version of herself came through, right? Because depending on what your spiritual beliefs are, what you think, like some people believe if you are an evil person and you do evil things on earth, that you end up in the fiery lakes of hell. Like some people truly believe that. And that's
Mhm.
not my personal belief. And that's not to say that I'm right or they're right or whatever. But from your personal experience, what happened was she was in a contract with you to some for whatever reason that is, that we don't maybe know, maybe you know now, but she came into this earth. You also came into this earth behind her, from her, and then had this thing to play out in the 3D world. And then after she's passed, right? Because you're still like, I don't have answers, I don't know what's going on, actually has been able to give you some healing.
Absolutely, 100%. It's given me the healing I need.
Mm-hmm.
Because understanding, for me and my personal beliefs, understanding is the pathway to forgiveness. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
sugarcoat what I experienced
Right.
at all. Understanding is the pathway to forgiveness. And it also doesn't mean, yes, I did feel better after the channeling sessions, but I still had to digest everything.
Yeah.
I still had to turn inward
Process.
and process and deal with the emotions that came up, because um, one of the things that was said in the second channeling session with my mother's spirit was, she called me her precious girl.
Uh,
And my inner child didn't know whether to drop to her knees and cry or run to her bedroom and slam the door. When, I waited my entire life to hear those words, and I heard them from the afterlife,
mm,
right? And so, how does one process her saying it in the afterlife where I can't physically reach her,
mm-hmm.
right? I mean, in one respect, it does feel good to hear her say, my precious girl. She repeated it 3 or 4 times in that session. And I just sat there and bawled, because even though I knew I was talking to her spirit, my nervous system, my body needed her here so that I could, I don't know, fall into her arms and receive what I never did
Mm-hmm.
when she was on earth.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so I think I took that answer off on a different
No, it's
tangent, but
okay.
it's it's just such a unique experience when you are able to understand things that happen at the soul level. And that's why I did what I did. That's why I've written Talking
Mm-hmm.
to the Light, because it is, I believe, once people understand that they are in a karmic cycle with a pre-birth plan at the soul level.
Mm-hmm.
My mother came here to have her experience of being so fully disconnected from source or
Mm-hmm.
God that, I came here to support her in that.
Mm-hmm.
We have supported each other, right? In our pre-birth plan.
Mm-hmm.
It was successful.
Yeah.
It
That's
sucked.
so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it sucked to
Yeah.
be the recipient of her abuse
Of
and,
course.
right, to be her caregiver. It was one of the worst experiences of my life. And, it's also important now, I think, to point out that just because I have this deep soul level understanding, it doesn't sugarcoat what I
Mm-mm.
experienced on Earth,
No,
right?
no.
Not at all. Not at
Yeah,
all. So,
I think a lot of people can relate to this. I certainly can. Not the channeling piece, obviously, but the lessons and the learning. So like if I look at my ex who abused me for 20 years as a contract, like that pre-earth, we came in and he was going to abuse me and I was going to, experience this situation, right? And then I was going to get out and then I was going to change my life and I was going to, write books and now be on a podcast and coach other women and help them. Like, what a gift. Like, truly, like, and again, it doesn't sugarcoat what I went through. It doesn't mean I wanted that to happen. It doesn't mean I enjoyed it in any way. I did not. It was the worst time of my life. But when you can look at it with a different lens, and like you
yes,
said about the understanding of it, right? And really it's the story that you're telling. So like you have this confirmation through the channeling, right? To give you that, I would just have to create that story in my head, right? To say maybe that's actually he was meant to be the teacher of
yes,
my incarnation on this planet at that time, right?
yeah,
Like I don't
uh,
even really like to give him that kind of credit, but like
yeah,
in some ways, like it helped me be a better human to grow and to help people and make an impact. So, like, I think the way that we change our stories and look at things and understand things from different angles versus getting locked into, oh, I'm this victim, Carol, who was abused by my mother for years and years and years, and I never broke out of the cycle. And look, and she's gone now, and I can't do anything about it, right? Like, that's not your story.
yeah, yeah. I didn't want that for the rest of my life either. I
Mhm.
didn't want to sit around and wonder. I did not want to just sit around and feel lost in confusion,
Yeah.
feel lost in the abuse, feel lost in the, oh, well, I can't be successful because my mother beat that out of me too, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's really, for me, it was about moving on in my life.
Mm-hmm.
What did I need to move on in my life? Therapy validated me
Mm-hmm.
and it was wonderful. And I recommend therapy to anyone in a position like mine or yours.
Mm-hmm.
100% validation is everything. But man, to take it to this next level and to be able to sit here with inner peace, I don't live in the past anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I have the tremendous gift of understanding what the tremendous gift of really receiving everything that came in through these 9 channeling sessions, and then to be able to transcribe them all and share them with other people so that they can use it as a springboard
Yes.
because it's going to open up a level of their own roadmap,
Yes. It's like
right?
closure in some ways because you get these answers and information that you didn't have before. And now you get to share that with other people because, and I was going to ask you about this, were there themes or things that you're like, oh, like, I don't know, that people would resonate with when it comes to like narcissistic behavior and abusive behavior?
Oh, yes, yes. So in one of the channeling sessions with my mother's spirit, I had asked, you know, why were you the way you were? And she explained some things that happened in the 3D physical world. Um, and then Demi said, higher guidance is coming through to explain that it's not so much narcissism, it is narcissism on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Higher guidance is explaining it from the 5D,
Mm,
right? it's not so much narcissism as it is this person is not resourced. So I asked Spirit, well, what does not resourced mean?
Hmm.
And what came through was, and of course, they were talking about my mother, but I also think that this is a universal thing.
Hmm.
What came through was Spirit says, someone who is not resourced is someone who is not properly loved and cared for during their developmental years. And I thought that was interesting. And of course, when my mother was alive, there's no way she would have ever talked about anything that happened when she was a child. And even if she did, a trait of narcissism is lying. You couldn't trust anything she would have said anyway.
Right.
So after higher guidance explained that it is not being resourced, my mother Spirit stepped in and said, it's like I was birthed and cast aside. I cried a lot when I was an infant. No one knew how to help me. And you have to remember this is 1944. There's
Hmm.
no internet, right?
Hmm.
There's it's 1944. It's
Hmm.
certainly not modern by any sense of the word. So she said she was birthed and cast aside. She had stomach problems when she was an infant. I assume she also had colic because she said she cried a lot. And so she said her parents were not equipped to deal with her. So they
Hmm.
just cast her aside. So I'm
Yeah.
assuming in today's words, that means they let her cry it out.
Hmm.
I remember back in the 80s and 90s, crying it out was
Hmm.
a thing in the
Yeah.
parenting magazines, right?
Yeah.
Which my compassionate self could never let my kids do.
Hmm.
But um, so my mother was left to cry it out. And she never received love and therefore did not know how to give love.
Right.
So this is the not resource thing. So I don't know. I
Yeah.
probably cannot sit here and say that your ex
Hmm.
is someone who was not loved or cared for during his upbringing, during when he was an
Yeah.
infant in the developmental years. I don't know that for sure, but this is true for my mother, and I would like to think that it was
Yeah.
probably true for, let's just say,
Yeah.
most people. So that was a very wide awakening. Um, when my mother was 5 or 6, her spirit explained that she fell off a horse and knocked loose a neural pathway in her brain, and that her spirit said that knocking loose that neural pathway is what made her unable to feel love,
Mm.
express love, even know what love is. And so when you combine that head injury with what she experienced as a child and toddler, she experienced rape when she was very young.
Mm.
All these things compounded
Wow.
her spirit explained that all these things compounded and just made her who she was.
Right.
And as she continued to age, her teenage years, she got married when she was 17, 2 weeks after high school graduation. As she just continued to age, everything continued to compound, and the frustration and anger she felt, she didn't know what to do with. And it
Hmm.
just turned her
Yeah.
spirit said it just made me who I was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I can sit here and see and understand how everything that happened to her since birth
Right.
actually, I can just,
Yep.
and of course what I know
Yeah.
of her as her daughter, I can just literally see this
Yeah.
timeline,
Hmm. Yeah.
right?
Well,
Yeah.
when you
So
were saying about not resourced, and you asked, what does that mean? And I think probably what does that mean for your mother? Because for her, she was not loved and cared for in those developmental years. Yeah, absolutely. That will create a sense of narcissism. Does it always? No. Plus all of the other things that happened to her, right? So we're not gonna say, oh yeah, just because you weren't loved and cared for, you're going to become a narcissist because that's not true. Because, like, for instance, my ex was very loved and cared for growing up, and almost to the point of enmeshment with his parent, which was
mhm.
also part of why I believe he is the way he is, right?
Yes,
Plus
yes,
his upbringing, plus how he was bullied, plus this and this, right? And again, either way, whether it's your mother's story, my ex's story, other people's listening, and they know what their ex is. They know what their mother went through or their father or whatever. That doesn't condone the abuse of you or me or anyone, right? But it explains why people do the things they do,
yeah,
why they end up what they're doing. Not just the soul contracts, but the way that they lived their lives or how they were mistreated or
right.
harmed on this earth, or who
Right.
knows if they have, other disorders or things like that. So I think that's really interesting, especially that the details, because here's the thing that stands out to me is that not just asking the question about that, but like that her soul was latched onto some events like that she could like what's the word I want to use, communicate
Mhm.
to help you fully understand. Like, not like saying, like, it was right and this is why I did it, but it was like, this is what happened in my life that created this version of who I showed up as your mom.
Yes, I agree 100%. And I also agree with you, this everyone's story is unique to them, right? And so
Hmm.
my mother not being resourced,
Hmm.
there may be other people out there whose mother obviously was not resourced, but you I can't sit here and say everyone's experienced it this way. So this is the
Hmm.
part of the channeling sessions, the transcripts that
Hmm.
are unique to me. However, it does open a thought process within the reader that makes
Yeah.
them wonder, oh, well, what happened to my mother?
Hmm.
So it's really important to just understand that not only is everyone's situation unique, but their healing is unique as well,
Yes,
right?
for sure.
Healing, right? And I'm sure you discover that as you
Hmm.
coach people,
Hmm.
you know, it's just important to understand that healing is a unique process to
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah.
And when we did a channeling session with the divine feminine, that was one of the things that was stressed is that
Hmm.
healing is, they talked about what are the first, we talked about what are the first steps to healing. And they also said that knowing each person needs to find what brings them solace, whether it's their faith, meditation,
Hmm.
therapy,
Hmm.
because healing is as unique as the individual.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Love
really
that.
important to point out.
Yes, I love that. And one thing that I really resonate with and the stuff that you're talking about is you have these answers, but not everybody's parent has passed, or not everyone's ex is willing to say, like, oh, I didn't mean to do those things to you, or apologize, or, remind you that you're precious. Like, those kinds of things aren't available to everyone. Now, maybe if they do a channeling, they could get that, but not everybody's going to be able to do that. Here's the other thing, though, is when I'm working with clients and we're considering other possibilities, if I like, let's say you never had this experience at all and you were my client and you said, my mother should have never abused me. She should have never hurt me like that. She should have known better. Like, those are the things that would create the most pain for you, right? Because it happened and you can't change it. But if
Right.
we said, well, is it possible that your mother had something wrong in her brain, that maybe something happened to her? And you might be like, yeah, I guess that could be possible. Oh, yeah, and I actually heard a story about one time when she this or that or the other, or her. And again, it's not condoning the behavior of what happened
Right.
to you and how she did that to you, but it gives you a little bit of reprieve to go, oh, yeah, if I consider these things, then I maybe can find some healing. Because the point is that you aren't suffering for the rest of your life because of what someone else did to you.
Yes, I agree
That's the
100%.
point. That is the point.
Absolutely.
So I
Yeah,
love this.
that's the
Like, this
point.
is really exciting. I want to read it. I do. I absolutely do want to read it. I think, having those like themes and understandings, like, obviously, like, there's unique aspects to your story that not everybody's going to fully
For
resonate
sure.
with, but
Yeah.
still, like, having this information could be very healing for certain people to shift their perspectives, to see, oh, wow, maybe this could be me.
Yeah. And for me, it was all about shifting the perspective. I knew there had to be an answer. So call that my intuition, um, or just my desire to look off the beaten path. Because if I'm not finding an answer somewhere, I'm going to go find the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just how I'm wired.
Yeah.
And right. And so this has these 9 channeling sessions. It's like it's the full package. It took me from understanding why at the parental family level to taking those answers deeper to the divine level, and then channeling, Demi channeled my spirit guides and then my soul, and just talking about embodiment and like moving forward and enoughness and worth. And it really formed, I mentioned the pre-birth planning blueprint. Well, this has really helped me to form a 3D blueprint, if you will, because, I had 53 years of experience within maternal narcissistic abuse. And, it's these reactions that conditioned responses, I think is a great phrase for them, that I developed as a method of survival and safety
Mm.
followed me into midlife,
Yeah.
because it was so much, it was part of my being. It was
Hmm.
the fabric of my being, these conditioned responses. So these channeling sessions allowed me to explore what life looks like outside of those conditioned responses.
Mm.
And when I first started them, I was really putting, or just even as a victim of, and it's okay to say that you're a victim of narcissistic abuse.
Hmm.
There is so much, I think, nowadays, get rid of your victim mentality. Well, at first we have to honor the fact,
Yep.
acknowledge the fact that we are victims,
Yes. Hmm.
right? And
Yep.
then it's crawling your way out of that victim hole,
Exactly.
and it's learning what the opposite behaviors of those conditioned responses that you want to get out of.
Yeah.
So that's what these channeling sessions help me to do. And that's why I'm so eager and excited to share them, because I invested $10,000 in this. I had
Mhm.
6 months of daily access with a psychic medium.
Wow.
And this information, everybody needs to hear this stuff,
Hmm. Hmm.
and so that's, I've there's 3 volumes to Talking to the Light. Each volume is only $37, because I want to make it accessible to people,
Hmm.
right? I worked with an incredible, phenomenal, trauma-informed psychic medium. She just held space for me, and the channelings we did together were so accurate and so deep and just so revealing.
Hmm.
And they just, and it sounds cheesy to say, but they changed my life.
Yeah.
And I want others to at least just read through them, and
Yeah.
then let them be a springboard
Hmm.
for you as you continue to discover what is available to you out there. Like when you,
Hmm.
as you're exiting victimhood, as you're
Hmm.
moving into the next chapter of your life, because there is a life out there that is not tied to being a victim of
Yeah.
narcissistic abuse. And also, there's a life out there that is not tied to the conditioned responses you're operating from.
Yeah. That was so well put. And I'm so grateful for you to share
Oh,
this and share your stories. And um, I just find this, my my podcast is designed to help people with recovering from these kinds of things and help them stop thinking about it, worrying, like all that stuff.
yes.
And when I bring guests on like yourself, they're usually very different from the things that I'm teaching about. But I want that because I want people to have exposure to all different manners of healing. Because what works from one person on chakra healing might not work for somebody else that would work with channeling, right? So we
Yes.
need to be have awareness of all the types of tools to heal, and this is actually a really good one, especially
Mhm.
because you already did it for everybody else. So now that all I got to do is read through it and see what resonates and see what shifts for them to help maybe,
Yes.
like you said, springboard them to the next level of healing. So I really
Right.
appreciate that.
Bro, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks for the validation. And
Yeah.
I think I know what you do is so important, because women like us, and men too,
Hmm.
right? Men are also
Hmm.
victims of narcissistic abuse. So
Yep.
definitely have to honor that as well. But the work that you do helps people to, it's peel back the onion. It's
Hmm.
all about peeling back the layers of the onion,
Yeah.
right? And it's, you really need an arsenal of things at your side,
Yeah, I
you
agree.
know?
Hmm.
And I did turn to books before I when I first learned about narcissistic abuse and that
Hmm.
my mother was one, I did turn to books.
Hmm.
Books are so valuable. Talking to people is incredibly valuable. And so the work you do is just phenomenal,
Thank
helping
you.
people. And isn't
Yeah,
it
and you
what
too.
this is
Yeah.
about for us, for both of us,
Yeah.
to be able to be on this other side of, healing? And that's not to
Yep.
say that we don't have things that might
Sure.
trigger us every now and then. It happens. But to be on this side of healing and then to be able to take what we know and help other people, like
Yeah,
what a gift that is. I'm
absolutely.
so passionate about it. So,
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Before we wrap up, one question I want for you, and then I'm gonna ask you to tell everybody where they can find you, how to get your ebook and all of that. But the first thing I want to ask, well, the last thing I actually want to ask you is not related to this at all, but I always ask my guests the same question. What is something that not a lot of people would know about you? Maybe your close friends, your spouse, family members would know, but something a lot of people don't really know about you, something interesting or I don't know, a hobby that you have.
oh my goodness, you're putting me on the spot here,
I do.
Allison.
I do it to everybody.
Oh my goodness. Well, you know it because we've just talked about it for, you know, almost 45 minutes or so. But I have always had a deep interest in channeling and psychic mediumship.
Mm.
And I do believe I am one of the people you mentioned earlier that you believe everybody does have this in them. I do too, but they're
Mhm.
blocked. And I know I'm blocked. So I got to work on that part. But I'm just so really into understanding the 5D and really into
Mhm.
exploration that is off the beaten path. Look at me, look at what
Yeah.
I've done,
Yeah.
right? So that's a big main thing for me. And then another thing is I love travel.
Mm.
I love I love experiences while traveling, like cooking lessons while you travel,
Oh,
things like that.
fun.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's another thing about me. And let's see.
Where was the last place you traveled to?
One of the most memorable things was crossing the Atlantic on a small ship, about 74 other people on board, and
Whoa.
it was just 2 weeks of doing absolutely nothing, which is
Wow.
phenomenal. So, so nice. So that type of thing I enjoy.
Yeah.
Well, a little bit of
Cool.
solitude, and
Yeah.
I'm a deep thinker by nature.
Yeah.
So,
That's
yeah,
cool. Thank you. I just like for
yeah,
people to get to know, obviously they know a deep level of your story, but just to know a little bit
right.
more about who you are and the humanity behind the voice. So
Yeah, yeah.
I
Thank
love
you.
that. I love that. All right. So where can people find you? Where can they get this three-part book that you've created?
Yes. So, my website has all the information you need. It is sheaskedwhy.com.
Okay.
Sheaskedwhy.com. There is information about my ebook, which is more a
Mm-hmm.
digital download.
Yeah.
There's two ways to get started with talking to the light. The first is to just start with volume one,
Mm-hmm.
and those are the four channeling sessions, three with my mother and one with my enabler father. It's interesting because my father goes in and talks about what life was like for him as the enabler.
Oh, wow.
Right? He explains why he just sat back and let it all happen. It's
Yeah.
fascinating.
That's cool.
So you get started with volume one,
Okay.
and then there's links to purchase two and three at the end of each volume. Or if people just want to jump in and get all nine, which is what I highly recommend, you can just buy a bundle of all three. And those three volumes are 37 each, so it comes out to be 111.
Mm-hmm.
With that volume three purchase, people get a free curated spiritual book list from me. The books are not about narcissistic abuse, but they are
Mm,
spiritual in nature. So
awesome.
sheasky.com has everything you need to know.
Okay. Is it asked ASKED?
Correct.
She, like you
Correct.
asked in the past. Okay, perfect.
Yep.
All right,
Yep.
great. Well, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your vulnerable story. I really appreciate it. You guys go check out Carole Murphy and look at her books. And if this is something that would benefit you and you feel called to that, I encourage you to lean in because I'm always going to be bringing you as many different things that I can, including the things that I do for myself for healing, but what other people are doing, because who knows, maybe it's something that would help you too. So thanks for being here.
Great. Thank you so much,
All
Allison. I
right.
really appreciate it.